Leia and I are going to introduce to you our special guest today. It is Amanda Montell from Sounds Like a Cult. How did you get into cults?
How did I not?
Okay, so what kind of haunting would you want to experience?
I want a ghost to fall in love with me.
Hi, everyone. Leia and I are going to introduce to you our special guest today. It is Amanda Montell from Sounds Like a Cult. As you'll notice, my hair is pink in that episode, meaning we recorded this back in February, long time ago, almost a year ago. But we're super excited for this collab. And we got to talk to Amanda all about how she got into cults, as well as her dreams for her own ghostly encounters, which we as a TGOG community might need to manifest for her. And we got some inspiration on how to throw the best Halloween parties. So check out Sounds Like a Cult wherever you listen to podcasts. And Amanda has written a couple of books, which are all out and available now to buy. Cultish is one of them. And then The Age of Magical Overthinking, which I actually happened to find in the local bookstore in Marblehead. And I picked it up for myself, and I think you should too. Either way, we hope you enjoy this episode. And if you want to check out our episode that we did with Sounds Like a Cult, we talked about the reborn dolls, which is a really fascinating, interesting conversation. If you want to check that out, it came out October 22nd on the Sounds Like a Cult feed.
It's perfectly timed that we're talking to you because I was visiting some friends in Portland, Maine the other day, and they said to me, they were like, we live in a world where quite literally everything is a cult these days. It feels like there's no middle ground or like conversation you can have without people having really intense opinions, arguing very vehemently for like the position that they belong in. And I was like, you guys, do I have a podcast recommendation for you?
I know. And people have equally cultish opinions about the podcast itself.
Right. I was going to say, I feel like there's this like fan cultiness that exists.
For sure.
And like if we were to do an analysis of both of our podcasts, like, I don't know, what would the analysis be? It is a little bit culty.
Yeah, I would call it a watch your back.
What's the worst tier? What's the ranking again?
Our podcast's cultish ranking, predicated on the idea that cults fall along a spectrum rather than just a cult, not a cult binary, are live your life, watch your back, and get the fuck out. That's not like a scholarly taxonomy, but it does prove pretty useful when trying to identify like, okay, that group is culty, but in like a cute way, and that group is culty in a get the fuck out way.
Get the fuck out.
I think our podcast cultiness is in a cute way.
Yeah, your podcast community seems adorable.
Creepy and adorable.
If you feel differently, you can tell us when we're not recording.
No, I like totally love the paranormal community that you've erected. Sorry. We were talking about that word earlier.
Yep.
And I desperately want to be a part of it as someone who doesn't like sincerely believe in ghosts, but desperately wants to meet one, has put a lot of effort into trying to meet one. So I don't know what that cognitive dissonance is all about, but it's been present in my life for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot of our listeners too. You know, people want to believe and they want to hear those stories. It doesn't mean that they necessarily have experienced something. And I feel like you can probably relate to that with a lot of your listeners, because what percentage of listeners do you have that are actually a part of a cult?
Or that actually know they're a part of a cult.
Or are cognizant and self-aware enough to know that they are in a cult.
Well, I think similarly, there is a tendency in society to want to categorize things definitively, like, oh, that is a cult, and I can label it as such, and then I know it's bad, and then I know that I should avoid it and judge the people who are in it, and, you know, there's a lot of, like, sensationalism surrounding that, when my argument is that, you know, cultishness is a little more fluid, and what we perceive as a cult has so much to do with cultural normativity. You know, there are so many jokes that have been made over the years by religious studies scholars saying, you know, cult plus time equals religion, or a cult is a group where the leader thinks he can talk to God. A religion is a group where that leader is dead. So those like sayings sort of highlight the fact that, you know, there hardly is like a one definitive, unquestionable definition for what a cult is, which is not to say that some of these groups that have been described as cults aren't totally life-ruining. But I'm more interested in the gray areas, like how do we all participate in cultishness every day? How are we all susceptible to this type of influence, even if you're not in a full-blown cult? And similar with the paranormal, it's like, I'm very interested in the idea of how I can conjure ghosts from my past. Alexa, please play All My Ghosts by Lizzie McAlpine. So it's like, you know, I'm interested in the more metaphorical or symbolic ideas of ghosts and cults, if that makes sense.
Sure. So how did you, for people who are perhaps meeting you right now for the first time, how did you get into cults?
How did I not? Okay, so my dad spent his teenage years totally against his will in a pretty notorious cult compound called Synanon. It was this 70s era alternative drug rehabilitation compound turn lifestyle movement for folks in that, you know, peak cult era of time who just wanted in on the countercultural movement of the era. And so my dad's dad, who thought of himself as like an edgy intellectual, was like, kids, we're moving to a cult, which of course is not what he said.
Right.
No one like voluntarily joins what they believe to be a destructive cult. But yeah, it did end up pretty badly. My dad escaped as soon as he could. As soon as he graduated from high school, he like snuck off the compound every day to attend a normal school, even though you weren't supposed to do that.
Which is just a testament to his strength and his intelligence, that he was able to recognize what was happening around him was not what he should be experiencing.
Especially in such a formative time of your life where you're so easily influenced by everyone around you.
He didn't love it. Yeah. I mean, he joined at the beginning of his high school years. And up until that point, he'd grown up in the School of Hard Knocks in Spanish Harlem, New York. And so, like, he'd been around the block, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like, it's hard to identify with any confidence what qualities make someone more susceptible to groupthink or whatever than another person. I mean, my dad definitely craves community. Like, I've seen it. He's a birder.
There we go. Fellow birder.
Yeah.
I got to see his list.
Yeah. Yes. So, you know, I can see those tendencies in my dad, but for sure, he showed up on this compound, took a gander around, and he was like, there's too much conformity. People are worshiping this dude at the top. It's just not for me. And my parents are research scientists, and so they're sort of like professionally skeptical, which is not to say that they're not susceptible to the influence of like a charismatic leader or ideology. You know, we all are.
Sure.
But I grew up on my dad's riveting stories of this cult, Synanon. And he didn't think anything of it. You know, I would like beg him to tell me stories from his life growing up, and my mom too. And he was just like, stories. I don't know. I guess, you know, when I was 14, I moved to this cult or whatever. And I was like, what? Like record scratch.
Classic dad move to just like drop it like it's nothing years and years into you living. And you're like, excuse me?
I know. I mean, I feel like it's generational to do more or less reflecting on your past or whatever. So I think he'd always just been like very forward thinking, like, get out of poverty, get out of the cult, you know, chuck along, make it work. So I sort of feel like I cut my teeth journalistically and storytelling wise on like interrogating my dad about his like cult stories that were like out of order. And I was like, wait, back up. What's going on? And then throughout my upbringing, I couldn't help but notice cultish influence like that which my dad described in Synanon everywhere. Like in my high school theater program and in the startup where I worked when I first moved to LA, and certainly in the ways people would interact on social media. You know, you're talking about these like fierce ideological debates that people get in over nothing online. That all inspired me to write my book, Cultish, which is about the language of cults from Scientology to SoulCycle, because my background's in linguistics. And then Sounds Like a Cult was kind of like a spinoff of that idea. Let's keep talking about this in a more lighthearted, cheeky way. The cults we all follow, Disney adults, Trader Joe's, etc.
Yeah.
I also feel like it's hard not to be fascinated by the idea of cults. But I think the first time that I realized cults didn't necessarily have to just be, you know, a group of fanatical people drinking the Kool-Aid was growing up and seeing all the MLMs pop up around us.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, those Tupperware parties, the makeup parties. And then I was like, wait, what is all of this about? Because people get so intense about their beliefs and you get more and more sucked in and it becomes more and more dangerous and the stakes can increase most of the time. I think I'm a part of the cult of Trader Joe's, which
Absolutely.
there's nothing bad about that, right?
It was a live your life. We called it a live your life. Yeah, we really went in, and that is one of those groups that has like such a distinct aesthetic. The cashiers like low key love bomb you a little bit.
They flirt with you.
Yes, and people get so obsessed with the limited edition product drops, and there are Facebook groups, and people get really fucking into it, but not in a way that destroys their life, you know, sets up these exit costs. The us versus them mentality isn't so bad. There's no ends justify the means philosophy. It doesn't really check off those boxes. But MLMs do, no doubt about it.
Totally. And I think Trader Joe's is a live your life cult because we haven't been given the opportunity to move the needle forward. Like if there was opportunity, if they created like these crazy ambassador programs or whatever, I'm sure it would slide into kind of that more dangerous territory.
Oh, the loyalty that Trader Joe's has, they could easily spin it into a watch your back or get the fuck out.
Absolutely.
So it reflects well on them that they're just, you know, handing out free cookie butter samples and like chilling.
Talking about cults, I'm sure, can be difficult because it involves talking about a group of people who often can be really hurt or like respond aggressively towards what you're discussing. Has there been any cults or I guess like topics within cults that you have had a lot of fear going into discussing?
For sure, but they're not the groups that you might think.
Like who?
Well, that's true and untrue. This is what I'll say. I went through an intense legal vet when writing my book. And I learned a lot from like the in-house counsel at HarperCollins, how to protect myself. There's a bit on Sounds Like a Cult where I'm like always singing / frantically repeating the word allegedly, but it's like not a bit. Like it is very interesting how you can sort of like skirt litigation if you make sure to phrase things as an opinion
and not fact.
Yeah, and not a fact. Or like in my book, I talk about groups that are more sinister, more destructive, Scientology, etc. And you become exposed to legal ramifications if you start saying things that haven't been alleged in a reputable source already. So like with Scientology, you know, I wasn't like blowing the lid open on Scientology. Like there's so much that's already been said by like whistleblowers and stuff about that group. I was really just putting my spin on it and analyzing how that group uses language to influence their followings in ways that we certainly can't see and that we might not expect. On Sounds Like a Cult, we have run into like a little bit of like sketchy legal trouble with maybe only one group. But in general, I feel like I'm pretty good at identifying like what's kosher because of that legal vetting that I went through.
Yes.
And it is funny that like if you're in on the joke, you'll probably like being called culty. You know, it's the sort of thing where it's like, if you can't laugh along with it, that's a red flag.
Right. If you take yourself so seriously that you're not willing to acknowledge there's like a culty element to it, then it's like, well, what are you trying to protect yourself from? And like that feels like there's a little bit more danger in it.
Exactly. So like we're always riding this line where I tout sort of more seriously and journalistically in my book that like the word cult can be used itself to separate us into an us versus them. And, you know, the last thing you want to do when talking to someone who you think might be involved in a group like QAnon or something like that is to be like, you're in a cult, you're brainwashed. But at the same time, like language is so context dependent and you can't control it from the top down. And it's just a fact that people toss around the word cult more cheekily all the time to refer to brands and fan communities and such. And so like we're always navigating those nuanced waters. But there was a pretty cult followed Peloton instructor named Hannah. Oh gosh, I don't remember her last name. Don't cancel me, cult of Peloton. But like she shouted us out in one of her classes the next day. She was like, I knew they were going to do us. I knew they were going to do us. I was waiting for it, you know. So if you're in on the show, that's the thing too, is that like the show is kind of protected by the fact that it's entertainment. But yeah, no, it's for sure tricky. Yeah, the backlash, I mean, it's so entertaining to me like when listeners take our cult categories like super seriously because like they're made up. Like I just made them up. Like they're not real.
Right.
And so it's too funny how some people in reaction to a certain episode, and I love this discourse, by the way, like I think the disagreement and debate is the whole point. Like this is also subjective. In reaction to the same episode, someone will be like, I can't believe you're calling this a cult at all. And another person will be like, this is a get the fuck out. How dare you call it a watch your back? I'm like, it's just silly. Like, it's not.
Right. Yeah. And it's up for debate. It is up for debate.
Which I welcome. And, you know, it is riding that line between like earnest cultural commentary and like just a bit. So it's like a recipe for debate. And I love that.
I also feel like you are not going into your episodes being like, definitively X, Y, and Z. You're just trying to understand. And I feel like you're coming at it from a psychological human empathy approach of like understanding why people would be drawn to something. And at what point does it become dangerous, or does it ever become dangerous?
And exploring the people who are in it and the people's opinions who are outside of it too, because that also what people who aren't in it feel towards that group is some of the biggest defining parts of a cult being dangerous, right?
Definitely. And the fact that we're talking about not Heaven's Gate and the Mansons in Jonestown, but the Reborn Doll community and CrossFit makes it all the more subjective and all the more nebulous. So it's been really interesting, like doing the show all these years and seeing people's reactions to it. And I never could have foreseen the like cult that's been born out of the listeners of the show. But yeah, it's like fascinating to apply the sort of, you know, boxes that we check off when we cover certain topics on the show, like to the listenership of podcasting in general. Because
there's a lot of connections. Yeah. Totally. I mean, Corinne and I kind of in a cheeky way have said, join our pyramid scheme. And it's kind of in reference to, if you listen to our podcast, tell 2 other people about it, you know, pass along the word.
And then you get an invisible ghost mobile when you get so many listeners to listen.
Yeah.
It's an MLM.
Totally. I mean, also like the line between cult and just good marketing is very fine. We're just living in a particularly cultish time when we're losing trust in institutions that are supposed to make us feel held. We're looking to fill those voids in alternative places. Sometimes they're on Reddit. Sometimes it's a podcast. Sometimes it's a really fucked up spiritual community. And I'm just like so interested in finding cultishness in a positive way if you can.
Right. And there's so many nuances. Like I think I look at something like the Mansons or Jim Jones and all of the like Heaven's Gate and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I would love to believe that I would never get caught up in something like that.
Oh my God, but you look like a Manson girl. We all do.
I was going to say all 3 of us do.
These brunette girlies, we would be over.
Right. But then like you look at things and cults that you talk about kind of that feel more benign and wouldn't necessarily on like the surface be called cults. But then I'm like, oh, I have exhibited all of these behaviors, and I understand how easy it would be to, if like say Trader Joe's did slowly evolve into a more sinister cult, like I'm already low level there, you know?
I talk about this all the time, and this is like on a slightly more serious note. I would not necessarily be as susceptible to a group cult environment, but throughout my life, I have found myself in so many cults of one, where like I've been attracted to the influence of a single charismatic figure who's like, you know, allured me into a one-on-one relationship using many of the same language and tactics that cult leaders use. It's just I'm their only follower. So that's happened so many times.
Influencers too, you know?
Right.
Where like 1000%. They don't even necessarily try to create an individual relationship with someone, but somehow they just get the entire world or whoever their audience is to feel such a strong connection to them, despite never meeting, despite never speaking, having zero interaction. That's a 2-way road. It's very much, for the majority of people, a 1-way relationship.
It also makes me think of like my relationship with my older sister. Like I'm 2 years younger than my sister, and growing up, I wanted to be just like her. Like I did everything she did, and it was just like she never asked me to, if anything, that pissed her off. But like,
right. Well, I feel like triangulating amongst like your parents, your friends, your sister in real life in order to build an identity, a set of rituals for yourself, like that's the classic healthy way of like, moving through the world. It's just that, Corinne, to your point, like so many cults these days are parasocial. And online, you're perceiving so many identities and trying to, we get chooser's paradox. Like I talk about this on the podcast. I talk about it in my book a lot. Like I think one of the reasons why, we feel so lost and find ourselves in these parasocial cults a lot of the time now is because we have this chooser's paradox where there is at least the illusion of infinite possibilities for the direction that your life can go in. And that wasn't always true, like in the hunter-gatherer period, it's like you were born in this tribe and you're going to survive. And now, it's like I could have any hair color. I could move anywhere. In theory, online, I scroll through TikTok. I personally don't have TikTok, thank God for me. But in theory, like you scroll through TikTok, you're like, oh my God, look at all these careers that people have. Look at all these, fashion aesthetics that people have. And that can feel really overwhelming. And so, if you can find a group that provides an identity template of like, you are a Glossier girl, or you are a devoted soul cycler, or you are a Swiftie, or you are a Trader Joe's stan, or you are a reborner, then that can feel like, oh, thank God, I can surrender, I can relax. And then in that sense of relaxation, you might not realize that group could like take over your life in a more insidious way.
Right. Well, so for today's sake, would you like to momentarily step inside this paranormal cult that we've created? We call it our most haunted friends or our phantoms. And you were saying that you haven't necessarily experienced anything paranormal yet, but that you would like to, or have you? Or are you like not sure if it was paranormal?
I mean, certainly when you're a kid, every single night when you like pee, you are certain there is a ghost in your hallway.
I mean, that evolved into my adulthood. I don't think that's ever gone away.
Yeah. I mean, I was absolutely terrified of my basement throughout my entire childhood, which I think is normal. But I couldn't get over the fact that like the world is a graveyard. So many people have walked this earth. Like everything is probably built on top of someone's decomposed corpse.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, I've been on hella ghost tours in my life. I want to believe that everything that I experienced on those tours was a paranormal interaction. But, do I really believe? I don't know.
It is tough on ghost tour situations because I've been on a few and I feel like I almost find myself believing certain people in the group and not believing others, where I'm like, well, I don't know if I actually believe that you saw that shadow around the corner that you just said that you saw. But if I experienced anything, I would tell people and I'd be like, oh my God. So I find myself feeling that too on the ghost tours, being someone who fully believes in the paranormal.
Yeah. No, you have to sell it. I mean, we're all theater kids. You really have to sell it. And I actually think I would love to guide ghost tours. Like, I think I would love for that to be like maybe a late, like a retirement era career for me. The best ghost tour that I went on was in New Orleans in the French Quarter. And that like square mile or less of space is haunted if anywhere on this earth is haunted. I know that to be true. I love graveyards. Yeah, I'm eager. I'm eager for ghosts to be real.
Well, yeah, and I think that's something that's so interesting is the paranormal world is so unknown that we don't really have the ability to say or speak with certainty. And there's so many different types of hauntings, but like on a very, very basic level of energy. And this is not necessarily paranormal, but like if you walk into a room where people were just fighting, you can pick up on that, And I think that
so true.
That is an experience that I feel like almost every human can understand and relate to. That if you just take that and then try to understand that like that can exist when your body, your living soul passes away, that energy does go somewhere, or it doesn't just disappear,
Yeah, in the past few years, because I just finished writing this book about irrationality and like growing up the daughter of scientists, I was like conditioned to sort of like worship rationality, dismiss mysticism. But I've come to really respect and value intuition like as a profoundly useful human quality and skill. And it's something that, yeah, like you can't quite describe. Like, what is like feminine intuition? What is that thing that tells you that like those people were just talking about you?
Right.
Like there is just like the intuition is very, very real and it helps us survive.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if you take that thought exercise a little bit further, I don't know. Yeah, there isn't a fine line between like something that's real and something that's not. That's a dangerous statement, but
Sure. But even having grown up with scientists as parents, like science is so baked on like proof and hypotheses and then finding things to back it up and evidence. But a lot of science begins with a theory that has no evidence. And then it's the like discovery of that evidence.
I sometimes feel nervous, like existing at that nexus of because science is under such threat. Speaking of cultishness, you know, like especially now post-COVID, like there's such a weaponization of like questioning of science, you know? And so I feel reticent to do that. But you're right. Like, I think there is a point when you're talking about like human feelings and human experiences when like doing the math, so to speak, doesn't help you, you know? And beyond that, you kind of do have to rely on intuition if you're talking about feelings and these more like abstract phenomena. But what I think is really funny is when like ghost hunters and things try to Doc and Back to the Future style, like use science to find ghosts. And I'm like, you can't square that, like inventing those like machines and whatnot. And at that point, I'm just like, relax, like you're just a boy who wants a toy. I think the manual bodily ghost hunting, that's what I can get behind.
Sure. I think it's hard with the paranormal when you're using those tools and you're like 100% it's this, because we can't definitively say that. Because Corinne and I have gone on ghost hunting paranormal investigations where we use those tools and it's like, okay, is this an indication of something? And I mean, it's fun, first of all.
It sounds so fun.
Just having an openness of like, we don't know what this is, but maybe it is indicating something otherworldly.
Totally. I mean, I narrativize the shit out of my life. Like I create stories and narratives and attribute like cause and effect and try to shoehorn plot points into my life that don't exist. It's like things are just happening at random. Your life is not a story. And that's some of the same mental gymnastics that I'm seeing here. It's like we're trying to create a story out of events that might not even be events or phenomena that might not even be phenomena. And I actually think that that's a very human impulse. Like we want things to make sense. We want this cause to connect to this effect.
We do.
And even if I'm not doing that in a ghosty way necessarily on a daily basis, I'm still doing it in a kind of like mystical way.
I mean, we talked about this on your episode actually, where in order to survive, there is a little bit of delusion in all of us.
For sure.
Yes.
We kind of can't spend too much time thinking about the big picture. So we like delude ourselves into thinking that the small, minute things of everyday life is the most important thing, because that we can understand and we can grapple with and we can allow ourselves to live the next day.
Completely. And it's like not irrational, but it's how we cope with the intolerable, overwhelming mystery that is life as a human on this planet.
Right. Okay, so what kind of haunting would you want to experience if we were to like manifest one for you right here?
Oh my God, what a wonderful question. I've been living for the past month in a cabin. You might perceive the A-frame shape of the wall and ceiling behind me.
Is this a writer's retreat?
Oh, sure, but it's like mostly I've been podcasting this month. But it's like mostly a change of scenery, you know, like LA can be a lot.
I get that.
So I'm in a town called Idlewild, which is very mystical. And there's just something haunted in a nice way, positive, good spirits about this town. Every structure looks like a little ghost child is like running through it and laughing like just around the corner. Like that's how every
I love it.
Like coffee shop and
Inspiring. We need to go.
Oh my God, you would freak out here. Like it's a mix of like crunchy mountain people and like hippies and libertarians and like conspiritualists and witches. Like it's a cultural poo-poo platter of nonsense. So I would love, before I had to go back to like the vile modernity of the big city, if just like one of Idlewild's like first peoples were to appear in this area, you know?
Do you want like a physical, you want to see like a full bodied apparition, or do you want to like hear voices?
Wake up in the middle of the night with them over your face.
Yeah.
Tickling your toes.
Okay, no. Sorry, yeah, let's get specific. I would love for it to be outside. at twilight.
This sounds romantic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're romanticizing your ghost experience.
I want a ghost to fall in love with me. Is it too much to ask at twilight? I want to go on a sunset walk with an apparition. I'm kind of sick because you know how like your eye is hyper attuned to be like overly paranoid during twilight because you're like adjusting to the dark. And so if a threat is coming from behind a tree, you know, you want to be able to clock it. So I feel like that's a great time to be open to seeing things that you ordinarily wouldn't. And so I would love for the physical embodiment of an apparition to just like maybe, well, I have been seeing things. I actually have been seeing things around this cabin.
Okay.
What kind of things?
There are these shadows in my periphery. And I've been actually, oh my God, I'm so glad we're talking about this. I've been seeing shadows in my periphery like animals. Like maybe they're animal ghosts. So then I guess I would love to see just like more of what I've already been seeing, but maybe in a human form.
Your cats are with you right now. So
Yeah.
I bet that there are some sort of like animal hauntings within the space that you're in. And now they have new friends to interact with. Because I mean, how many people who are going to this A-frame are bringing their cats with them? Probably not that many.
No, they're not even allowed to be here, actually. So none. Yeah, I think now that you mention it, my younger cat, Theodore, he has been acting a damn fool. He has been bananas. Beyond normal cat zoomies,
Yeah.
I do think he has a ghost friend here.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
Claire, my other cat, who he's normally terrorizing, she'll be like sleeping in bed, totally chilling, and he's like berserk. So I
Wow.
love this theory that he has made a bygone animal friend in this cabin.
Yeah.
I'm here for that.
Yes.
We always say trust your pets. And if your pets are behaving like there's spirits around, then that to us is most certainly a haunting.
But it feels very, it could be scary, but like a Teddy Roo's having fun. So
Right.
Right.
And I think every haunting is and can be scary because you're not expecting it. It's something that you didn't invite into your space showing up unannounced and unexpectedly. And even if it's like, you know, a deceased loved one popping in to say hi and check in on you, like you're not expecting that.
right.
So at first there is fear. And then maybe over time you can be like, oh, now I know what it is. But then there's also like, we've heard so many stories where something appears as one thing or as one person to get your trust.
Right.
And then it's actually something more sinister.
Yeah. Now that we've parsed through it, it's definitely feeling like, because Teddy Roo also has like this little boy energy, like the little boy in the ring, you know what I mean? And I really think he's made a friend. And so perhaps I just want Teddy Roo's experience for myself.
You're envious of your cat. That's fair.
Okay. Well, I have a piece of advice for you, Amanda. And this is something that I don't know if you've heard of before. We certainly have because we live and breathe the paranormal world every week, all week. Knowing that you're in a cabin, if you hear your name, if you hear a whistle, if you hear a crying child outside, you must ignore it. Do not go looking. Because, I mean, it could be paranormal, but also on the flip side, like you're the person who talks about the cults, which involves real life people. And Sabrina and I have said this a million times. The paranormal can be absolutely terrifying, but oftentimes what's scarier are humans. So
Of course they are. Oh my God. I have a vacation responder on my email like all the time because I don't want anyone to say my name. I'm just like, you cannot reach me.
No.
Yeah, I have like a healthy respect for the ocean. I have a healthy respect for wild animals, and I have a healthy respect for the dead. I have been waiting to like fully embrace a paranormal experience, I think, since I was a little kid, because I mean, my partner and I are big into Halloween. Like, we throw the most outrageous Halloween party. We have a
I love
7-foot animatronic witch named Agatha. We turn our whole front yard into a graveyard. Oh, yeah.
So
I mean,
cool.
it's ridiculous. Last year, we were like, okay, we're going to have a smaller Halloween party this time because in 2022, there were 80 people there and it was too much. So we're going to keep it more intimate this year, we decided. And so to make up for the fact that it wasn't quite the same level of rager, I devised this glass onion style ghost mystery escape room.
Amanda, you are literally speaking, like I've said this on the podcast, like this is my dream for every year to have a Halloween party like this.
I couldn't recommend it more. It was actually so because you can order like escape room accoutrements, online.
Yeah.
And so I divided all my guests into 3 parties. And one party was in the apothecary. I had transformed my office in the back of my house into an apothecary. One group were dedicated to the witches. One group were dedicated to the vampires in the living room. And one group was dedicated to the werewolves in the yard. And the idea was that our house, which is like 120 years old for LA, had been haunted all along. And that night, the night of Halloween, our energy had unleashed the evil ghosts of the witches, yes, vampires and werewolves, and that they had already killed one of the guest attendees, but they didn't know they were dead, and no one else could tell which of us was dead.
Ah, I love this.
Yes, we had to go through these different, like, unlocking of a thing and decoding whatever to figure out who was dead, to find ingredients to add to a cauldron, and to find a spell to recite once those ingredients were added to bring this person back to life and lay the evil spirits to rest.
I'm sorry. Don't be surprised when I come knocking on your door on Halloween this year. I will be there. You didn't invite me, but I invited myself.
100%. You have to come because you'll appreciate it.
I want all of the information of how to run this because I want this to be my own Halloween party.
It was too fun. The other thing was like, there were these other spirits that were communicating to the different teams to like direct them where to go. And like, oh gosh, there was like a clock that opened up. It was, yeah, we'll offline about it.
So Amanda, I have a question. Do you have a clone? Because how do you do all of the things that you do?
We just recorded an episode of Sounds Like a Cult that will be airing in October, and it's February. So that's how.
Yes. A lot of
That's true.
pre-planning, pre-recording. Yes.
Yeah, pre-planning, pre-recording, because we just have to make more time for Halloween party planning.
You're inspiring me to do this because I feel like, well, I'm on the East Coast in Massachusetts, and a lot of my friends have requested that I have a Halloween party, and I've just never felt prepared enough because I don't want to just half-ass a Halloween party. Like, if I'm going to throw a Halloween party, I'm going to fucking throw a Halloween party.
Mm-hmm.
And this is making me motivated.
Corinne, your maternity leave is now, in addition to taking care of your child, should also be dedicated to your like relaunch into society at a Halloween party.
Well, I think something like, speaking of chooser's paradox, I think a constraint that could really help you would be just to come up with a theme. So like the escape room was a great theme. It like really narrowed down what we were going to do. And I would love to host another Halloween party that's sort of like French Belle Epoque dinner party,
Ooh.
where like the ghosts of dead French intellectuals.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I'll help you with this.
This sounds so good. I will tell you, one of my good friends, she is having her wedding next year, and it's going to be this beautiful garden party. Everyone's going to wear like big floral dresses. But she's heavily debating making what would look like this just like gorgeous wedding into a murder mystery party at the same time. She's like, how do I make this
love that.
more aggressive?
I recently got engaged. I feel like I always need to make the disclaimer that I proposed.
I love that.
Thank you. But I keep referring to the wedding-esque event that we want to throw as a carnival.
Beautiful.
Weddings, it's like everyone's been to those. I would totally do like an escape room kind of thing.
Yes. Now I'm just thinking of all of these different themes. Okay, I'm going to pitch you a wedding theme idea that is kind of escape roomy.
Amazing.
A miniature theme where all the people, like you create everything around you to make everyone else feel really small. Like you have giant flowers, like sculptures and stuff. So you feel like you've all been, it's a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
What's the budget on this wedding?
Unless it's $5 million, maybe this won't be able to be executed.
You never know the favors you can call in, like
that's true.
I could cult leader style manipulate some company into giving me like large blow up installations of flowers and stuff. A psychedelic theme is cool. I want it to feel immersive.
I've always wanted a room full of kittens at a wedding, and everyone can play with the kittens during the event and adopt them if they would like.
Oh, that's very doable. Yeah, like I could partner with one of the rescues where I got one of my cats, or like the Best Friends Society, if you've heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like anyone could do that. I love that idea.
Well, Amanda, knowing that you're obviously into Halloween parties. What sort of direction do you go with your Halloween costumes?
So the costumes take a back burner because we're all about the decor. This is like a needs improvement category. Last year, my partner Casey and I were Darla and Alfalfa from The Little Rascals.
That's cute.
That's so cute.
The year before, I was Elizabeth Holmes, which was like very easy to pull off.
Mhm.
You know, just black turtleneck, blonde wig, red lipstick, which I wear anyway, and the voice, do or do not, there is no try. So that was easy.
Okay, so you get into character though, which I very much respect.
For sure.
Yes.
Growing up, I was Captain Hook 4 different Halloweens. So that's just worth noting.
You got to bring it back.
You're a theater kid and you were trying to perfect the character over time.
Yeah, it grew up with me because I was Captain Hook at 4, 9, 12, and 17. By
Okay.
17, it was Captain Hooker.
Oh, of course.
Thank you for laughing.
I said I want like a pirate themed, Captain Hook themed Halloween party where you turn your home into a boat.
I love that. Okay, I know my best friend isn't listening. Well, no, she should 100% be listening to this podcast, but
Don't tell her about it so you can say whatever you want.
yeah,
Just-
that's the point.
She doesn't need to know.
So I am co-planning a 30th birthday extravaganza for her that's Titanic themed.
Wow.
And there is going to be a pirate scavenger hunt. And I'm proud of this. I'm going to make a signature cocktail that's a whiskey-based, rose-flavored cocktail called a Jack and Rose.
Oh, brilliant.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Once this podcasting thing really starts to get to be too much, I'll just abandon my life, move to these woods permanently, and do a ghost tour full-time profession and a bit of nautical themed party planning / Halloween
There you go.
planning.
You have your future planned out.
Los Angeles is the perfect place to just buy a warehouse and do these types of events. I feel like people would be so into it.
Completely. Like I've been resisting the delusional atmosphere of the town. I need to lean in.
Lean in.
You have the natural ability to give the people what they want, and it's this. It's a town of theater kids, and you have the skills.
There are theater kids in LA, but I also feel like a lot of like hot people, like the popular girlies move there, and that's scary.
LA is scary.
It is.
I mean, it goes back to like what's really scary, the paranormal or real people? And I think the answer is real people.
So accurate. Thank you for bringing that back.
You've had so many episodes and so many cults that you've covered on Sounds Like a Cult. Are there a couple episodes that you would recommend to our listeners that kind of would be a good crossover, a good in-between of our subjects?
Definitely. There was a Halloween episode a few years ago on the cult of hell houses, which are are you familiar? They're these like evangelical haunted houses that youth groups will put on, like Christian youth groups. But instead of there being like a Dracula room or like a Frankenstein room, it'll be like an abortion room or a premarital sex.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. I've never heard of this. I need to go listen to this. What?
Horrifying.
There was a weird, I think this was when I was looking up the McMammy Manor, like the haunted house, which is like horrific. If you don't know about it, basically it's like a torture house, haunted house. But when I was looking that up, there was like a whole subreddit of these hell houses actually being haunted, which I thought was hilarious.
They deserve it. They fully deserve it. Well, this is truly like the Venn diagram of everything we've been speaking about, because it's Halloween, it's culty evangelicalism, but it's also theater kids. This is what evangelical theater kids like have to do. You know, like Lord knows their high school is not putting on Spring Awakening.
Nope.
It's like you do your Hell House. That's how you be creative if you're an evangelical theater kid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good one. And then we just had an episode on the cult of Catholic school, which like Catholicism is so spooky. So I feel like that would be a good listen to.
I mean, if we think about Catholicism too, it's like the priests are the ones that do the exorcisms on people's houses.
Tell me about it.
So there is a lot of spookiness surrounding that.
And then, of course, like, where's the line between religion, cult, ghost story? And then, of course, I have to say that you two will be on Sounds Like a Cult Halloween episode this year, the Cult of Reborn Dolls, teaser, spoiler, which, what a hoot.
Very much so.
That was a scary topic because it's like dolls inherently are scary, but then it's also scary to talk about. you do this all the time, but we don't. It's scary to put yourself out there where like you provide opinions on a group of people that you are not a part of. And so it's kind of, I'm like, don't cancel me. That's how I feel.
Oh, right. Y'all are so safe and it's so genius. Like a ghost can't sue you or cancel you.
No, they can't.
We do try our very best to bring generosity to the table when discussing these culty communities. And they're all the discussions are predicated on the foundational thesis that like we are all a member of a cult of some kind.
Absolutely.
I need to step back sometimes and remember like not everybody is comfortable sitting around being like everything's a cult. But it is, so it's fine.
But it is.
Which cults are you a part of?
Oh my God. Great question. I mean, I'm in the cult of Los Angeles, definitely. This is why I have to like come retreat to places like Idlewild for periods of time because the cult of celebrity is so profound, like even just parasocially. So then when you live in a town and work in an industry where you're actually interacting with celebrities in real life, oh my God, I'm so susceptible to a celebrity like summoning me to like a meeting or a party or like some ridiculous thing and me truly like dropping everything and like dismissing my values and doing whatever they want me to do. So that's bad.
At least you acknowledge it.
Yeah. No, so I'm really like, I have to step away from like the Hollywood of it all because celebrity is so alluring and oh my God, could go on and on about that. Yeah, I was fully in the cult of theater kids, which was maybe the precursor to the cult of Hollywood. And we're all in the cult of podcasting. I mean, shit.
It's obviously a cult because there's so many more people trying to be sucked into the cult of podcasting. There's some crazy statistic where it's like 500,000 podcasts that exist out there. Probably more than that.
I mean, this is like 3 years old at this point, so I'm sure it's even more dramatic now. But when I heard the stat, it was there are 2 million podcasts uploaded to Apple Podcasts, and 1 million of them only have one episode.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
I have so many thoughts about this. Like the Sounds Like a Cult live show, the like 2 live shows we did a few years ago were about the cult of podcasting. So we like got into a little more deeply then. But I think it really is like classically a space that lends itself to cultishness because it's so new. It's so sort of like DIY, low barrier to entry. Like anybody can get into it, which is amazing and cool. But it also makes podcasters really vulnerable to Hollywood-esque exploitation. Like I will never get over how nuts it is that my like career that I pursued on purpose was writing books. And like when you write a book, your intellectual property belongs to you. Of course, like by default, like when you write a book, like that's your book and the publisher would never claim any ownership of that. But I was so shook when I got into podcasting that like how the industry or podcast networks or whatever, like lay immediate claim on your IP if you don't push back. And, you know, that's like a little bit predatory, right? So like there are so many pros and cons to the industry that have to do with the fact that it is so nescient and low barrier to entry and DIY and full of green creators.
Right.
Yeah, I could talk on and on about that.
Well, okay, speaking of like you're writing your books, what books have you written? What is coming out? What are you working on right now? Where can everyone find you and the books you have written?
Oh my God, thank you for asking. So I wrote these 2 books about language called Word Slut, which is about language and gender, and Cultish, which is about the language of cults. And then in April 9th of this year, I have a book coming out called The Age of Magical Overthinking, Notes on Modern Irrationality, which I think anyone who's interested in the paranormal and how our brains wrap around sort of like mystical ideas would be interested in because it's about the clash between our innate cognitive biases, like the mental magic tricks our minds play on themselves, and the information age and how those like 2 phenomena interact in sometimes like freaky ways.
Yeah.
That book's coming out in April and I'm going on a tour and I'm putting on this show called the Big Magical Cult Show and like it's going to be ridiculous. So,
oh, so fun.
Yeah.
If you experience more hauntings in your cabin, you'll have to let us know.
I will.
We'll manifest it. Our community has this like weird power. One, we're a haunted community. Everyone's haunted and then people listen to our podcast and get haunted. But we also have had an experience where one of our listeners was experiencing a haunting and like together we all like set intentions and tried to clear their space, they never experienced it again. So I'm going to try to use this in a let's manifest a positive haunting. And you gave us the recipe of what you would like to experience. So we'll manifest it. Whoever's listening, help manifest this for Amanda, and maybe it will happen.
Oh my God. And please tell me what spell you use, because that's what I'm obsessed with. That'll be another career, is like writing spell books. I would love nothing more. Yeah, anyways, send me your spells too, please.
Amazing.
Oh, well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. This was so fun. And we really liked being on Sounds Like a Cult, which will direct everyone to that episode too.
Hell yeah.
Where we had very intense discussions about maybe one of the creepiest uncanny valley dolls out there, the reborn dolls.
We really went there. Thank you for
did.
going there.
Well, thanks for allowing us to go there with you.
What a love fest.
What a love fest. We will see you on the other side.